Can I ask you something? Why is it that we underestimate ourselves as a human being? Why is it that we need so many tools, personal development, courses, trainings out there, and still we find ourselves feeling as lost as ever, or as lonely as ever, or even at best, or at worst, rather, confused as ever? Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Drop Your Noise. If you are new to the show, hi, my name is Kirti. Welcome. These are some of the questions that I have been asking myself in the last few months. Okay, I lie, maybe a year. When this situation occurred in the Gulf region, I knew inside of me this is going to take quite a while. We kind of went into a bit of a COVID phase. And I wondered, what am I supposed to do with this moment? I have seen in the matter of 24 hours, people feeling, oh no, not again, here we go. And the feeling of loneliness crept right back up. A lot of individuals are panicking and anxious about what is going to happen to their jobs and to their futures. And at first, everybody was like, come on, we got this, we can do this. And every day that went on was another day of how long, basically. And it didn't really help matters to see the way the news was being delivered in the West. Two of them in Europe had left me quite shocked at the way that it was almost that they took pride that another country was in a bit of a lockdown or in a tension mode. And it made me ask myself, where are we going as humans? I pulled out this card from these deck of cards that I created called, pause phrases. And this week's was from the deck of cards called Drop Your Noise. And I pulled out Tame Confusion. I thought, wow, that's an interesting one to pull out. And what does that really mean? When I was sitting in Dubai, one of the things that we kept getting very often was watch where you're getting your information from. And the way East and the West perceive things or gather information, it's remarkably different. And it also is the way we react or respond to the information we get. I came to understand how many of us are actually getting the short version of the story. For example, for me, it's on Instagram. They're very short, bite sized information dosages that we get. None of us are really sitting in front of the television and watching the screen 24 hours or for a whole hour on a segment or the other. And so there is just a little introduction to the bigger picture that's going on in the current world. And so I find myself having these conversations about being human again. When we look at how much we're getting different short dosages of information, we are kind of spiking ourselves to form an opinion or a judgment or a perspective with the little information that we have and not this whole picture. And so when I saw this going on from the inside, sitting in the UAE, and then I left and I came to Europe for some work, the narrative is so completely different. And to many, there is this perception that the way the UAE has presented itself, that it's actually feeling the hit of it because people are perceiving it like, oh, look at that, fame has finally got to you, influencers have finally got to you. And I find this quite an unfair judgment because of this little piece of information that people get. In fact, it avoids or it really doesn't get us to stop and stand still and see what's underneath those little pieces of information we get. And for me, it was about the community. If there's one thing I have learned and I've grown from is how diverse, various, and many, many nationalities come together and work towards a bigger vision, work towards something bigger than themselves. They motivate each other, they drive one another. I don't want to rank on any country, but when I was living in England, my creativity had lost its edge And one of the reasons, which I felt so guilty to say, is that people are not very optimistic there. You have to decipher what they say between the lines, and then they say, well, because we care for you, we're not telling you that. And I struggle with that lack of directness. So when I see snippets of information and we don't take into account the way the culture speaks and perceives things, it can bring a lot more misunderstandings. And I see a lot of that happening at the moment. And so, for the first time in a long time, I find myself in conversations being more and more quiet, listening a lot more, because that is what actually Dubai taught me. Being with so many different cultures is that you can't just take things for granted. You cannot say, my version is better than your version. No, it's because we're working towards a better or greater version of ourselves and for other people. You end up thinking broader than yourself. And I find that something that we can all take away outside in the world that we are facing in. I've come I've now come to the Caribbean, and in that state of all these little information sealed together, I'm constantly feeling I have to defend a country for for what they have seen on television. And it's almost having to flag this that assumptions and expectations and a certain kind of opinion that someone has formed. I question, where did you get this information from? How much research have you done on this? And I think this is a way of taming confusion, just bringing it to a level of, I've done my research, I've sat with this quietly, and what does that really mean? Of course, there's a lot more that goes into it, and I don't want to get bogged into this one. And I will be exploring this in my other podcast, which I've placed and posted on my Substack. This week, I decided that I would love to share the conversation I had with one of these, another, yet again, phenomenal lady, Lillian. She has been in the field of change management for quite some time, and especially in organizations and in corporations. She has guided leaders and teams from across the world. So I wanted to know what's changing now. Where are we heading in leadership? And her insights was really very much about coming back to the sense of being human. How do we tame this confusion? Because we need to start making changes because the world is rapidly undergoing some kind of disruption, a lot of change. And as human beings, we are struggling to keep up. Even I struggle sometimes to keep up. I find myself taking more time off and away from technology because it's just too much information confusing my head. And so she shares the perspective on where are we heading and what we really need as we move forward. So look forward to sharing this with you. Finally, I did mention to you that I am also taking a bit of a pause on publishing podcasts every week. Hear me out. It's not that I'm going to be posting less, it's just that I have structured it differently. What I'm introducing is this thing called pause phrases. It's based off a very old practice by the Lojong practice, which I was given many years ago. And FYI, at first I did not like it because the structure of those words were so complicated and very confronting. These cards really helped me along the way in training my mind to work with my difficulties, with my confusions and my uncertainties, even with my anger and aggression that I had inside of me. Because I was always so ashamed of it and even feeling very guilty about it, I did not know how to transform it over into a way that allowed me to interact more effectively, more lovingly, or even more respectfully to other individuals. And this practice has really helped me along the way. So, what I did was I have reframed these phrases, especially for different stakeholders whom I have worked with in the past, and now offering it to these different communities. And if you'd like to be part of it, I have a funding page that is starting up in a couple of weeks. Please be sure you go to it. There's some digital formats where you can get these cards from. It should be launching within a week's time. And then from there also, there is going to be behind these cards, we are working towards getting funds to create an audio library of storytelling, which you could be a part of. It'd be lovely to have your insights being shared with our community, reading out hopefully letters or emails that you'll send out that I can share with others so that through an ear, we are telling individuals who might feel lonely or lost, hey, you're not alone. And so that can give us the courage to open up and speak much more at ease with one another. And I would love for you to join me on that. And so, in order for me to publish those audios, something has got to give. And that is why I'm going to be hosting twice a month. You will have me on Drop Your Noise. And if you'd like those versions of audios, you are very welcome to join me in what I'm growing into as a community on my Substack channel, which you will find in the chat below. So these are all my thoughts. This is all that's been going on in my head. I'm currently sitting in the Caribbean in the next phase with these cards, and I would love to have you come along and join with me. Hey, thank you for listening. Looking forward to sharing the upcoming episode with you. Be sure you've hit follow and subscribe so that you can tune in to listening to my conversation with Lillian. And please, please, please reach out. I'd love to hear your thoughts around the conversations we have. Together, we make this world a better place. So let's start one conversation at a time. Take care. Have a good one. Till the next one.